Let's talk about Thames Tideway. It's a £4 billion project. You've got your investment. You've got Ofwat has given you a licence. I suppose, are you on track to deliver?
Yeah, we are. We have to. I keep having to pinch myself to remind myself that as a company and as a project, we're only just over 3 months old into a 7-year endeavour, and there's a huge amount going on. We've had all year we've known that we'd get to a point where we reach licence award, and at that point, as a new company coming out from under Thames Water, we had to operate standalone. So everything down to from your payroll, invoicing, email, the whole like email addresses. Right. I'm not allowed to swear, am I? I'll try not to do that. There was a huge amount to do just to set the company up, and I think we ultimately that happened on the 24th of August. But of course, that was the same day that we awarded the £2 billion worth of construction contracts. So pretty much all the buttons were hit at once, and we've been hammering through it. And I think credit to the team back in head office there that actually the going live week passed without anyone noticing, i.e. everything worked. Nothing. There were no complaints about we can't pay this, we can't do that, this doesn't work. So that sort of bode well. But yes, so we're now 3 months in. We have an OCI period with the contractors. These are design and build contracts, and we all recognise that we'd have a 6-month period where we'd do the best we could to make the most of it. And of course, on top of all that, we've got the alliance arrangements, which add another challenge and another opportunity. So there's a huge amount happening. Are we in good shape? Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, I mean, what you talked about the fact you had to set up a company, and I'm always intrigued by, in your role, do you consider yourself to be driving a project or really driving, I suppose, a new corporation? Because it's a big thing you're setting up there. How do you see yourself? Are you a corporation or a business chief exec, or are you a project manager?
Well, and I think that the challenge for us is to understand that we've got to be both. We are a regulated water company. We've got investors who have agreed to invest over £3 billion, and we're a company. You've got to take that very seriously. But of course, we're a company with effectively only one objective, and that's to build a project. So we are combining the two. I think that's. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about Crossrail and some of the similarities. Crossrail was an independent company dedicated to delivery of a project. We're the same, but there is another dimension of we are a company with a P&L at the end of the day.
Yeah. Because so how do you describe what you're trying to do? Because on the very basic level, you can say, well, I'm trying to dig a very large tunnel, but it's more than that, isn't it?
Well, it's way more than that in terms of there's the physical challenge. Yes, we've got to dig a tunnel and take the sewage out the Thames. Of course, we see it greater than that. We see this as an opportunity to transform the river and London's relationship with it, and there's a lot to talk about outcomes versus outputs, and I suspect we might get to that. But we are also a going concern, and it would be wrong to believe that all we're here to do is dig holes and go away again. Yeah. So who knows where that takes us? The first thing we've got to do is be successful in what we're doing, and that could go different places.
Because I think it's apparent that you've got a lot of places on the surface that this project, despite being 75 metres below the Thames, there's a lot of places which it pops up.
Sure.
I mean, I suppose. Is all that? Are you in good shape in terms of your community relations? Is that all going to happen? Is that all on plan? Are you friends with everybody along the route?
In fairness, we're trying to be.
Well, how are you doing that? What are you doing then?
There's obviously now we've got the contractors on board. We're setting up our community liaison working groups, and we've still got to make it very clear that we're in this listening mode. We've got to understand that. And it's been the same for, we've got the DCO here, but we had a hybrid bill on Crossrail, we had a Transport and Works Act on Thameslink, and those processes ultimately can be quite bruising. They're argued in very legal terms, they're argued in very engineering type terms, and they have to be because that's how the process goes, but that's not the same as bringing people with you. So there's no doubt that, certainly in my experience on those last 3 jobs, you do have a piece to do to establish a new and more productive relationship. Is that perfect? Do all our neighbours love us right now?
No.
I'd be lying if I said yes.
No, but the reason I ask, I suppose, is a difference, I suppose, between this project and, say, Crossrail, is that at the end of the day, what you're doing is out of mind, is out of sight. Nobody notices it. There's no kind of perceived value for the customer, other than all that stuff that you did to them along the way. So how do you get over that particular issue?
I think there is the bigger picture, and I think one of the things that infrastructure projects have to understand going forward is that there's no point talking about just the product. We've got to do a much better job of helping society, including our neighbours, understand the real broader benefits of what we're doing. But you could keep that up to the cows come home. Your immediate neighbours have their very immediate concerns, and telling them how wonderful the world's going to be doesn't address that. So you got to do both, but right here, right now, this is trying to understand what does this mean to our neighbours? What can we do to be the least nuisance or the least blight possible? I think it's important to admit that we are a worry for them, and we are going to affect their lives. Sometimes you get a sense that people have been told you'll not notice us, and it's a ridiculous thing to say. Of course you're going to. It's going to be a construction. Whatever we do, there's going to be a hive of activity next to you, and admitting that, and admitting that we've got to work together, is a start.
Right. So how do you describe the product then? How do you describe the product which you are, because you can say it's a very large tunnel, you can say it's some fantastic portals and regeneration areas on the surface, you can say it's a better quality Thames river, and other than saying all of that, I mean, how do you describe the product?
Well, we've summarised that. We did a lot of in-house talking about what did the project mean to us, and what do we stand for, and what do we want to achieve by it, and we summarised all that by describing it as reconnecting London with the Thames, which is quite a grandiose title. But every time we tried to come up with a word to describe what we're doing, it began with RE. Whether it was reconnecting, rediscovering, rejuvenating, reviving, remembering, it went on and on. Right. And what we were saying to ourselves was that there's an opportunity here to do something quite special. It's a once in a generation opportunity to fix things now, but for us, but also for the people that follow us, future generations, and providing a river that can and should do an awful lot more for London and the economy more broadly. So it's a bigger ambition than simply doing the engineering, and we know we can and we will get that bit right. I think our success and how we're viewed will be on what was the outcome of having done that. And we've got a big role to play in that.
So it's not just a tunnel then? Yeah?
It's not.
Okay. You heard it here first. There are still many, though, that believe this is an old-fashioned engineer's solution to something which basically has... there are many different modern ways of actually solving this problem. That this is Andy and his engineer mates chasing their dreams and living out their engineering fantasies.
Sure.
Why are they wrong? Why are they wrong?
First thing I would say is
well, tell us about your engineering fantasies. Let's do that later. Come on.
Ours are bigger than Crossrail's. We have a larger diameter.
All right.
But whichever way you look at it, I think there are 3 factors at play here. The population of London is highly unlikely to reduce. Everyone's talking about it getting more and more. We're not likely to see people voluntarily ripping up concrete, hard standings roads and putting softer, more permeable surfaces in. And wherever you go in the world, and I've visited quite a few sewers around the world now, people say the same thing. You talk about a 100-year storm as a typical measure of designing something by, and I think it was the guys in Chicago said, well, yeah, 100-year storm, but we've had 3 100-year storms in the last 5 years. We're not quite sure where this is going, but what is becoming more apparent, and very topical, we've seen it this week, we are seeing way more extremes of weather. So those three things, I think you have to accept the facts. And it's all there are things that London needs to do, and part of the debate around this project has been, I think, an unhelpful polarization that this is either a tunnel or it's sustainable urban drainage systems. It never was either or. It always should have been both. The truth is, whatever size tunnel we build now, if nothing else changes and we don't get any smarter at dealing with rainwater and doing something more useful with it, it's only a matter of how many decades' time is London going to be talking about building another tunnel. So the volumes going into the river now are enormous, and the tunnel will address that. What we've got to do, and one of the things that I think we've got to leave behind, is a London that understands and is now actually making a difference to what it does with rainwater.
Sounds like you got the name wrong to start with by using the word. It's just another wrongly named. Bazalgette would never have called his project the tunnel, because it was more than that, presumably.
I agree.
A wrong name then?
Yes.
Okay.
But that, I think that's an issue. I started off thinking, that the problem here is that we let engineers name projects and we shouldn't let them anywhere near it. And so Crossrail started off as a company being called Cross London Rail Links. Why was that? It was a Cross London Rail Link. High Speed 2. Why? Because it's a high-speed line and it's the second one in the country. Thames Tideway Tunnel. Why? Because it's a tidal. And Terminal 5, because it's the fifth. Terminal 2. And we're not picking on anyone here. We did it too. But we're very good at kind of describing what we're building. Now that's of almost no use whatsoever when you're trying to describe an outcome and why society should feel good about it. So that's something we have to get much better at.
Discuss later on. But meanwhile, you are a client who has to build quite a lot of stuff.
Yep.
What sort of client are you compared to Crossrail then? Are you thinner? Are you fatter? Are you more intelligent?
I think, and I know my Crossrail colleagues will forgive me, we have to be more intelligent, if for no other reason than our starting point should have been the best that Crossrail achieved, and we should get better still. And that's what every project should say, and should have the mindset of. So, yes, we've got to be better. I'm not saying Crossrail or any other project was bad, but we have to start with, we're going to take the very best there was and we're going to do better still. So I get that. Thin, I think we've got opportunities to be thinner. A couple of reasons for believing that. One is we've got design and build contracts, and not a client design, and a lot of the interfaces are different therefore. We've also got the Alliance, which is there to encourage all of us to do a better job. One of the Alliance incentives is the overall cost outturn. And for the contractors, that doesn't just mean the sum of their spend. It's the sum. It includes our spend as well. So it's in the contractor's interest to help us spend less, to employ less people, and that all takes us to the doing things once and not 3 or even 4 times. Yeah. As an example, we've got a marine logistics capability. We had to get this far in the job, but so will all 3 main contractors. Now you don't need 4 marine logistics capabilities on one river with one PLA. So there's things that naturally we can do to be thinner. Arguably, you never get the job done if you're not, but the end result should be we should be a thinner client.
I'm not sure whether it was you that said it, but there's a phrase which, the client will get the supply chain that it deserves. Maybe it was you. I suppose, how are you making sure that you get the supply chain that you deserved? I mean, have you got measures in there to make sure that beyond the Alliance, all the way down the tiers, that people are being protected, looked after, paid?
Yeah. I think there's a number of levels to that. I think let's start with the London living wage, something that we've specified as a given. Did we have to do that? No, we didn't. But there's some rights and wrongs in all this that you've got to start with, I think. We've procured in the time scales and in the time zone that we have procured in. It's a very competitive market, and the good thing about that is that we are with the tier ones, but increasingly engaging with the tier twos, we understand the world we're in. And it is about understanding what we can do together to get a successful outcome. Big point of alliancing is you can't have some people winning and some losing. And the shape and the structure that we're putting to that is very much around we all win or we all lose.
Yeah. Well, the experience of alliancing at, say, Anglian Water, it's taken many, many years to make it work. You haven't got 10 years to make it work. How are you accelerating that process of bringing it all together?
I think one of the
that
things,
cultural shift.
We had the launch of the Alliancing Code of Practice from the Infrastructure Client Group, and you're right. The experience, the stronger experience in this sort of area at the moment is with some of the water companies, where it is all about a longer term relationship, and a big point that the guys would draw everyone's attention to is that these things take time, and if the truth is whatever you can't accelerate relationship. Well, you can do team builds and things, but real trust, real ability to work with each other takes time. And you've got to, I think, be realistic about your ambitions. If you've got a 15-year relationship, then you can chart your way through that. If the truth is you've got to scamper up a hill and down the other side in 4 years, then you've got to be realistic about what it is you seek to try and achieve in that time. So it's alliancing as it makes sense to the situation that we're in. I am sure, however, that there are things that we will do that could become norms for similar situations. But as I say, we've got to be honest about what we can achieve, and not set out on something that's ultimately we're going to fail on, that you abandon halfway through, and you might as well not start.
One of the things that Crossrail did, of course, to try to, I suppose, galvanise the supply chain all in one direction was its consolidation around BIM and its leadership around BIM. You don't seem to be going down that similar sort of path. Is BIM wrong for this job?
No. You'll find that we've got the same specifications that Crossrail had in terms of what the platforms that we want the contractors to use and how we want them to work together. But there's a couple of interesting points. A difference between Crossrail and us is our asset is about as dumb as you can get. The bit that we're building has got no moving parts, and the truth is, once we've turned the sewer on, unless something terrible goes wrong, no one's ever likely to see it again. So it's a very simple asset. Having said that, what we're seeing now, which I think is different to when Crossrail started, was we've not had to try hard to convince the contractors to adopt the BIM specification and work with it. And I think we now see contractors that get it, see the benefits for it in their own right. So it's not a client saying, look, I want this asset BIM model for future decades, and contractors feeling obliged or compelled to do it. They're doing it because they want to, because they see the benefit.
No. But to be fair, you must have a maintenance strategy for your asset over the next 150 years, which, if you're really embracing BIM in the way that it's designed to be, i.e. it's not just about design and construction, it's about asset management, then you would be foolish not to completely buy into it now, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is the moving part assets, the bit that we build, we hand over to Thames Water, and that's a very clear understanding. That comes with the whole BIM model and the asset management piece and all the things that everyone would expect. As I say, our bit is a rather dumb bit. Right. The opportunities, I think, for asset management in a valuable contributing way, quite simply are different.
Okay. There's another phrase which you hear a lot: the supply chain get paid for the value that it brings to you. What special things have you got up your sleeve to help them to do that?
Well, I think you start with the former contract, and I think what we're doing here lends itself to a design and build approach in the first place. We've obviously got a role to play in helping the contractors get to better value outcomes. I do think the alliance itself is another opportunity for contractors to find value. And in a lot of these cases, it's
value for you or value for...
Or for both. I mean, if you look at the incentives that we all have, whether it's the NEC contract and the pain and gain, whether it's the alliance, which is a we all win or we all lose, for us and our relationship with the regulator, there's an overall cost benefit. If any underspend against the budget that we have is shared between bill payers and our investors. So, and that depends on the outcome of the job. And so, if we win, everyone wins, from the supply chain, the contractors, our investors, the bill payers, and that's structured quite intelligently.
You have obviously been chairing the ICG for the Infrastructure Client Group for the last year. I suppose where are you with that? What is it achieving? I suppose what have you concluded about a good client? What does a good client look like? Or what does the best client look like?
Yeah, I don't know that there is such a thing as a best client. I think what is, because we describe ourselves as clients of economic infrastructure, but that's such a wide portfolio. We've got nuclear decommissioning to new nuclear, to the utilities, to the railways, to the roads, the pop-up projects like ourselves, and arguably high speed too. And so there's such a wide range that I'm not so sure that we've ever bothered to try and define what a single perfect definition is. What is clear is that after nearly 5 years now of the Infrastructure Client Group existing, we keep turning up. And we're not doing that out of dogged determination. We're doing it because we realise that we're getting a lot out of each other. And I think with that, and we're talking about the alliancing thing, as time goes by, the guard has dropped. People are much more candid about what they've done and what's worked and what's not worked. So it's as much learning about the cock-ups as it is learning about the best practice, and it's an important part of it.
Is it easier from where you are now to be a good private sector client than it is to be a good public sector client?
You know, I really don't think there's much difference.
Really?
I don't believe that if you wanted to sort of simplify this to say, okay, we're a private company now, private investors, money's really important. Well, it was really important on the public projects.
Yeah.
I don't quite get it.
Okay, well, I would suggest you that in a private environment, the client has got the ability to look longer term. Is that not a case?
I'm not convinced. You know, it's a lot of the jobs that these projects that we work on are, they span governments, they span policies, they span spending reviews, and I think it's the same challenges. You've got to be doing a good job. You've got to be doing the job safely. You've got to be providing people with confidence, and that is a commonality. Right. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're demonstrating you've got life under control, if you're providing confidence to whoever the investors are, whether that's the taxpayer or the pensioner, then you're in a good place. But that's the same.
Well, I'll try another one. You were able to make, or you were able to blend and not have such a delineation between capital and operational expenditure, if you want, if it's the best thing for the private sector business.
But again, I think I'd argue that those are the same. Okay. Those are the same points. I just don't see this massive difference between private and public.
You've just launched. Okay, well, I'll leave it there then.
Fine.
You've just launched your alliancing code of practice at the ICG. What do you hope to get from it? Is this saying to everybody, this is the way to do it? I be a client, or is this to say this is the best way to to actually approach alliancing?
As always, it's another piece of the knowledge that we have as an industry. It's not the code of practice isn't a prescriptive statement of steps 1 through 10. It's an identification of the issues that are important, that you have to understand, the clarity that you need, and it's more around creating an environment within which good behaviours and alliancing can happen than it is a set prescription.
Because it's not for everybody.
No, for sure. I mean, I think it's really important. We can run around with catchphrases like BIM and alliance and whatever else is the flavour of the day, but it's really important to understand what is it you're trying to achieve, and what's important, and then let's build around that. And if by alliancing we mean cooperation, a clarity around a common set of objectives, the roles that we have and the way that we're going to work together, then what's not to like about that? You know?
Talking about the flavour of the day, there are an awful lot of bodies like the ICG, there, all of whom are pretty much trying to do the same thing.
Yep.
What is your role to try and strip them down, to try to get some focus into what we're doing and try to make sure that not everybody's doing the same thing over and over and over again?
I think what's exciting about the environment that we're in now is there is a very clear government, and I would say pan-party appreciation of the value of investing in infrastructure for two very clear reasons: the short-term economic stimulus, but also an acceptance that this is all part of a better future in the longer run. And that's not the way it's always been, and that's been growing steadily, I think, with infrastructure delivery success over recent years and projects. So, and we find ourselves now with an infrastructure commission, which isn't something we had a while back. And we find ourselves with a moving landscape of some of the government departments that have been involved in infrastructure in different ways, and quite a bit's changing. So we've got a really, I think, good opportunity now to have a look, as an industry, to have a look at what we've been doing. There is no doubt in my mind that there are far too many groups in this industry all chasing the same list of projects.
Right. Which ones should go then?
All the ones except the one I'm running, obviously. You know, and this is where we need a grown. I don't think it makes sense to say, you know what, you and you should cease to exist.
Well, what's the first one to go then? Give us one.
It's not about anyone going. It's about understanding what groups in the industry are best placed to achieve what outcome, rather than us all saying that this is the list of 12 things that need doing and we're all going to have a go at them. What I hope to come out of this is a greater focus on, from different parts of the industry, on the issues that they are best placed to deal with, a recognition of the other groups that their role is to support and contribute rather than replicate. And I think if that's all we achieved in the coming year, as we see the NIC, the Commission being defined and developed, as we see the new IPA getting greater clarity on its role, there's a real opportunity for industry now to step up to that and try and speak with less voices.
Right. How do we move the industry towards more of an outcome-driven, I suppose, a whole life value agenda?
I think the encouraging thing that I've seen is that this is now a more common question. And when we talk about outcomes versus outputs, you don't get the glazed look that you might have done 5 years ago when that sounded like two words that were spelt similarly. So I think it's positive that we are recognizing that we should be talking about outcomes for two reasons. One is we need to do a better job of explaining to society what the outcome is and what the benefit is. I am convinced if we got that better, we'd spend less money in getting the job to a planning permission. We'd have less objection if there was a greater appreciation of why. I think that's the first point. The second point, if we were more clear on what the outcome was, we stand a much better chance of engaging and enlisting the huge capabilities of the industry to deliver a solution that works and one that could be radically different. And if you look at where Highways England are at the moment, you know, the solution for road capacity used to be more tarmac. Now we're talking about technical solutions, and the road builder's competitor isn't the next road builder, it's Google. And it's not even the car makers, arguably. It's a technology that 5 years ago you'd have said had nothing to do with tarmac and roads. So I think the more we understand outcomes and the more we're going to see technology deliver answers that 5 years ago we might not even have thought of.
Which are all good news for clients. And I suppose looking at the supply chain, one of the key challenges that you've got as a client is that none of these folks in the room here are making enough money to better invest in the kind of ideas which are challenging Google. What's an acceptable amount of profit for you then?
We've got to get to a point where we have a supply chain, and in this particular case, I'm really meaning the consultants and the contractors are making sensible profits,
which is
such that that's
Obviously,
not,
I'm looking for a number.
well, of course you are, and I'm not going to give you one, but it's got to be a model that allows people in this space to invest in the things that we all say we want them to invest in: training, development, research, and development. And it's extraordinarily hard to do that when you're bidding at 2-3%.
Yeah.
So it's and this isn't, and to a degree this is a leap of faith. Yes, I'd like to see you making a bigger profit margin. As part of your transition into doing that, you're going to be more capable to give me the things that I say I want, which is greater capability. And there is a chicken and egg.
Yeah. Because ultimately, and then I'm going to, final thing for me, and I'll open up to the floor, so be prepared. One of the key things which it will enable, a stronger margin would enable a company to do is to invest more in resources, to invest in them, to train in them,
Exactly.
to actually encourage them into the industry. That's good for you. That
Well,
needs to happen, doesn't
you
it?
know, it's got to be. You know, if you look at the automotive industry, if you look at the aerospace industry, they wouldn't get out of bed for 2 or 3% profit margins. You're talking about industries and companies that, yeah, fine, they might be talking about a 30% markup, but then an awful lot of that is going into allowing them to become better. So as long as we're in single-digit territory, I just don't believe we're going to have an industry that is fit and capable of taking us anywhere.
And you've got a plan to stop that, to change that.
Personally, right here, right now, no,
Yeah.
I haven't, and I'm delivering my job. But that's a part of what I think we as the client group need to do, and it's only the clients that are going to be able to do this, because we're ultimately the ones that set up the procurement piece. And as long as we preside over a situation where it's the lowest price that wins the job, we can't be surprised when we don't get the sort of capabilities we're after. So we've got some talking to do, and we have to work more closely with the wherever the money's coming from, whether that's government or the supply or the private market. We've got to have a way more grown-up conversation about where this industry is going, because the horse that we've been flogging is quietly and slowly not getting any faster.